What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I'm going to be reviewing episode 2 of The Last of Us HBO show. And I liked it quite a bit. I think there's a little bit maybe more to talk about almost with this episode than there was the last. There was some jumping, obviously, that was going on. This episode felt like a game. And I actually mentioned at the end of last week's video, at the end of the review, I was going to be really interested to see how the section of the game that this second episode is heavy gameplay, right? That's all it is. It's introducing you, I guess, to the infected in a sense, but mainly to the clicker, right? And going through that. And I guess if you're taking it from the game, it's Tess getting bit, it's Tess dying, it's that entire arc of the game. And that's very gameplay heavy. Now, it's also a lot of mini conversations and dialogue options. Right? There's a lot that goes on. I guess dialogue, the optional ones, where you could walk up to Ellie and she'll start doing things. It was a lot of that. That's the thing they were trying to replicate with this second episode. And I felt overall they definitely nailed it. I'd say they definitely nailed it. It felt like what you would imagine. If I had to create a show, an episode that felt heavy gameplay like, would it look like this? It would. There were some negatives because of it, because knowing the game, they jump around like crazy. They also didn't do the exact introduction to the clicker. Now, what I will say, the way they did do the clicker, holy God, I thought it was excellently done. The fighting, the lighting, the cinematography, the noises of the clicker. I mean, while it wasn't the iconic scene that you got from the game, and then there wasn't multiple locations that you go to and you fight a couple of them in each one. A lot of that stuff was trimmed out. But again, I think what they did well in this episode was you transfer it as well as you can, a gameplay heavy portion to an episode. But then in the things that you trim and cut out, you kind of introduce basically other ways of things playing out. They got to experiment and have a little bit of fun with this new clicker introduction, which I thought was incredible. I don't know if it's better than the game. I actually don't think it was, but that's kind of the beauty I'm starting to realize with this show, where they are separate, and it makes me want to play the game. And although the show isn't the game, it's doing things in its own way, and I don't know if it's better. I don't think a lot of things are better, but I still appreciate it for what it's doing. This kind of narrative in my head is kind of building over these episodes. So again, some of the negatives is like, the Tess, I like Tess. I think they're doing I think they did, I guess, because she's gone now. I think they did a pretty good job with the lines that Tess gave. She's a little bit more strict, and I mean, she gets a little bit more kind of lighthearted, I suppose, towards it. But you don't get the full Tess experience that you get in the game, right? In the game, I mean, I don't even know, 4 or 5 hours, right? Maybe until the Tess moment. Maybe it's a little bit less than that. In the show, what did we get with her? Maybe 35, 40, right? You don't get that many, minutes with her. So you lose a little bit of that. I still think their relationship was done well enough. I thought the ending, their dialogue, trying to match the game, I thought was awesome. The thing still is, I will say, and maybe this is a pro or con, it's actually kind of up to you to determine that, the best parts of this show, to me, just from a viewer watching, is when they mimic the game. That it's just the way I'm looking at it, and it could be the right way, could be the wrong way, whatever. When they are looking at the Capitol building and Ellie talks about the view, ripped right from the game, it almost sends chills. It's so good. And Neil, being the director of the second episode, nailed it. The Tess-Joel conversation. Now, they added quite a few things in that final, the tendrils or whatever they're called, right? They basically communicate. So instead of spores, it's these things. And because it's a new thing, they kind of can introduce the idea that all the infected basically have this, sense to communicate with each other. So when it started wrapping its way around the dead ones, the alive ones outside, they start to, make their way in. So you start to introduce more things. That scene with Tess, when you discover, she's bit, they stretched it. And I don't think that made it better, honestly, because it was so powerful in the game, being kind of just so direct, and you got to leave, you got to go. Another thing is they're replacing a lot of soldiers. Anytime there's human beings being the villain, they are seemingly replacing them with infected. I don't know if that's going to continue. I kind of predict it will. But again, that's just kind of weird to me, where it's soldiers are supposed to break down and Tess is supposed to slow him down, not like 5,000 infected. I get the sense the show kind of doesn't want to show Tess or Joel, or like Joel did kill the one, but I get the sense the show doesn't want to show Joel doing that for whatever reason. It's just a theory of mine. But that was, again, I don't think this episode was perfect. I actually think episode 1 was better. But this was a very different portion of the game. I mean, now we're going to, going to Bill, and they're going to change some stuff about that. So we'll see how each episode probably is going to feel a little bit different. Again, I think for what they were going for and what they had to work with, I think this was a very good episode. This felt like if you had a heavy gameplay sequence that you had to make into a show, but you wanted to layer it. You wanted to have conversations, but you're trying to rush through a story almost, right? I think they did it about as good as you could hope. But with that being said, there were still some things, that felt a little rushed, skipped over, especially if you play the game. Now, again, maybe that makes me want to play the game to re-experience those things. And one of the final things I want to say, the kiss with Tess at the end, what in God's name was that all about? I guess, again, sending a message of what those tendril things do. But that just was kind of weird. Again, I think a lot of the cinematography in this is incredible. I still felt very sad when Tess went. Like, I felt it. So they delivered on what you would expect. Like, what's the main thing? They want you to feel bad, and have all these, emotions when Ellie figures it out. And Ellie's, upset about it too. Joel, he's kind of reserved. He's kind of hiding it. But you're supposed to feel these things. And although they're changing some things and extending some things, the overall point, the main thing they're trying to do, they still nail it. How they get to it is sometimes different, sometimes longer, sometimes they skip things. And I do think that ends up most of the time hurting it, but it still delivers the big, kind of moments I think the show is going for. So ultimately, I did like it. I enjoyed it. I can't wait for the next one. I'm very excited, for the future of the show. And again, I feel like we're going to kind of go, not necessarily up and down, but I feel like each episode is probably going to feel a little bit different based off of, is it a heavy narrative part of the game that you're trying to copy? Are you going to kind of like, set yourself focus on that? When it comes to the gameplay, is the episode going to feel a little bit different? I think that's kind of the journey we're about to go through for these remaining, 7 or so episodes. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I'll see you all on the next one.